We're sitting down here with Martin to get a little bit of a feel for a game we first saw at Gamescom called State of Mind. And what is it that you're going to show to us here?
Okay, well, so State of Mind is a game about transhumanism, and I'm going to show you brief glimpses from the setup of the game, and then we may have time to jump into a rather late section in the game to show you how it plays, how it feels, what the gameplay is. And while doing all that, I will tell you a little bit about the story as well, because this is a highly story-driven game. Okay, so we're starting a new game. And as I said, State of Mind is a story about transhumanism. Transhumanists believe that technology will progress at exponential pace and that we will actually merge with technology, be one with machines, be able to upload ourselves to virtuality, stuff like that. So, the guy that we see here, Richard Nolan, he's at an accident site. It all seems horrible, maybe terrorist attack, and he has flashbacks. He has flashbacks of a past life of his, and this past life, is of some importance. Richard is a broken man, a man who has memory loss, and he sets out on a journey to put himself back together. Well, for now, we don't know what has happened to him. He has just survived this accident, attack, whatever it may be, and wakes up in hospital. Now in hospital they will perform some cognition tests with him, and we will by that also find out about the character. Who is he? What knows he? Well, he has memory loss. Memory loss. He does not know everything anymore. And I will just simply talk you through this cognition test that comes first. So, doctor says, I will ask you a couple of questions. But what we need to do first is focus an object that he will create in the room. This is the future. There is augmented reality. So we can see objects that only virtually exists. And this, somewhat echoes the theme of the game, because as we will find out, quite a few things only exist virtual in this game. Okay, so I've been developing adventure games for like 20 years, and so this game also has multiple choice dialogues. We learn what Richard knows about the actual date. Does he have proper cognition? The doctor will ask him a couple of questions. And what may be interesting is that you will be able to figure out the answers to some of the questions by paying attention to Richard's flashbacks. He frequently has flashbacks, and so you don't have to guess to get the answers, but you have to try to remember from the flashbacks. So Richard is in the same state of mind, if you will, as the players are. And now the game has an inventory as well. I've picked up a cube. The doctor said light it yellow. I'm doing that in the inventory, and now I can put it back. Okay, and well done, Martin. So, a couple more tests. I will try to keep this brief. Okay, so Richard is being asked, who is this? You know who this is? Well, what do you reckon? I think it could be his wife. She's been in one of the flashbacks. Okay, tell me about her. And we find out, okay, Richard is not only a broken man, he also has a couple of family problems. Who's this? His son. He may also be relevant to the rest of the story. Okay, Richard can talk about him. Okay, parents-in-law. That's always a tricky one, and Richard, of course, has problems with the parents-in-law. Well, and he also has a work, and we've seen that briefly. Richard is a journalist, and as such he maybe should be committed to the truth, and he is, but Richard is, in his private life, a little bit of a liar. All of that will be of, dramatic relevance, if you will. Okay, but now the doctor is sending me home. Go home, Richard. You're confused, you had an accident, whatever. Go home, it will all be well. Okay, and so, while we're doing this and watching a little bit of this transitional cutscene, I will tell you a little more about the project. As I mentioned, it's a game about transhumanism. Richard will find out at some point early in this game that he has been subjected to a mind upload. This is something that transhumanists actually believe will be possible in 30 years' time. So it will be possible to upload one's mind, and in Richard's case, the upload goes wrong. Well, the upload goes wrong, and as a result of that, he is now a broken man. He exists as a kind of half a person. He will have to get himself back together, and more importantly, another world exists where they tried to upload Richard to. So, and what is going on with that world? Why does it exist? And what is it there for? All of that we will find out in the game. Now, let me briefly, we're at Richard's place, and Richard hates robots. He's a Luddite. His wife is not there. Is this because they have marriage problems, or is this for another reason? Why is this bot there? Richard can look for his family, yell at the bot, of course. Well, and he can also...
I want this thing to disappear.
He can also make calls in this game. Let me briefly show this to you. Do we have time for that, actually? Okay. I'm cutting this short. He's asking, where's my wife? Where's my son? What are you doing here? Damn bot. Okay, finishing the conversation. The bot is not really helpful, yet professional and friendly. But now we're getting a call. We're getting a call. And who could this be? It's Lydia, Richard's affair. I'm only showing this to you because you can make calls in this game. You can call people and they will appear in the game as telepresence, and you can talk to them. And all of that, of course, creates and builds this character and the other characters. So, okay, Lydia, let's talk later. I have problems, many problems. Okay, so we're now all of a sudden jumping to a much later part in the game.
Can I ask something about the in terms of the dialogues and stuff?
Yeah.
Is that something that's going to change the way the story plays out, or is it more like you're exploring the story?
Well, it does in tiny doses, I would say. It is something that I believe, that I personally, as a developer, believe, creating the impression that it could affect the story can be interesting when playing the game, but actually affecting the story in terms of, we're branching to an entirely different story now, like some other games do. This is something that only really works when you put it at the center of your design, which isn't the case. So we're influencing the story a little bit by way of dialogue, but it's not groundbreaking, breaking away from the actual story. Okay, so only just for a brief glimpse, I would like to show to you the other world. Only one look at this other world, because I said this is a game of dualisms. It's a dystopian Berlin with a broken character, and there's if you will, a counterpart to this world. There is a VR utopian great world in this game as well. And as we already guessed, and as I told you actually, they tried Richard to upload there. And the result of that is this guy. That is this guy. So there's two characters in this game, two worlds, and Richard, the main character, if you will, is trying to put himself back together, and we already suspect that to do so he needs to contact this guy. And as I've shown you, there is this telepresence cloud call device, so maybe a connection between those two is possible, and then you can switch between the two freely. And as you can see, hey, this guy has a family, he has a son, so what's going on? What's up with all that? Richard is missing his family and half of his life, and could it all be there? Maybe. Right. And now, finally, where am I? Some gameplay. We're back late in the game. Richard will have to cooperate with Luddite people, machine breaker people. Machine breakers want to destroy technology. Richard is kind of a Luddite as well. He hates technology. But the problem is they try to upload him, and when machine breakers try to, destroy a secret virtual world, then maybe you should try to save your other half first. Maybe there's other people up there. So, okay. Here, what we need to do is break through a barrier in a tunnel to progress to the headquarters of the Luddites. And what I've done first is switch on the electricity. And now, let me see. I need to go.
So this is an example of how the puzzles are.
This is an example of machine puzzle gameplay. This is something that we do in the game. I mean, the game has a lot of dialogue and interacting with inventory objects, but it also has kind of machine logic puzzles in the game. Okay, I need to break through this barrier. There's a train here. Okay, the electricity is off. Maybe I can operate the train and move it way back on the tracks and then break through the barrier. But to do that, I need to make a couple of adjustments here, for example, and move this, so that's great. I should be able to move the train in the right position now, and I must do that, of course. Come on, still a little jerky. I'm sorry. Delete all of that. Okay. So let's get in there and start the train and move backwards. Move backwards on the tracks. Okay. And we're there. And now that we're there, of course, I need to go back and set back the tracks to the other position. What is this in English, by the way? This moving track thing. Okay. Set back to the other position. Yeah, and now I might return to the train and break through this barrier. And I will do that.
I gotta say, since I saw it last, it seems like you've added a lot of polish to the visuals. gone a lot further with it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, it's the whole game. Every scene, I would say, has been polished and refurbished, and yeah, we've done a lot, an awful lot on it. Yeah. So I believe it's cutscene now. I believe it's turning out quite nice. It is very complex to make it. It has a complex story, 2 worlds, 2 characters. It is difficult, but I think it is interesting. It is something that I want to make. And so, yeah, I mean, this is of course, oh my God, it's violence. Nobody ever shoots in my games. But now they do. Okay, but they've managed it. They are managing it. Okay, and on the other side, I will just save Lydia and then progress in the game. So, well, I could certainly do that, but maybe you have a question.
Yeah, one thing that I thought about is the sort of the low poly look of the faces.
Yeah.
What's gone into that sort of decision to go with that? It's sort of a what do you want to express by it?
Yeah, it's well, quite on. For one, this is a game. This is a game about a man whose life is lying in shards, and he's trying to pick up the pieces. He's trying to put himself back together, and this sharded look, I think, represents that whole idea very well. Something is in pieces, something is fragmented, and I need to put it back together. So the if you will, the meaning of the game, the point of the game is reflected in those visuals, but also a low poly game, and I think it is a purely, when you look at the flames, it's but they're low poly flames, but the game has an interesting mix in from farther away. Everything looks quite realistic, like as in realistic high-end graphics. Only when you move closer, you will see something's not quite right. This is those flames, they are polygons, and I believe looking at something closer and realizing that something is not quite right with this, that's also interesting for the theme of the game. And well, a low poly game is something that we can handle. We couldn't possibly compete with state-of-the-art high-end graphics, so we wouldn't even try. We could throw the entire budget at that and then not have a game and not have graphics as good as those other guys. So yeah, those are the reasons. Right. This is, and I mean, I think it looks beautiful with the characters the way they are. It gives the game a unique look. It is something, there has been quite some discussion about this, about the characters especially, but I like them, and we decided to stick with them.
I mean, it harkens back to some older games where you had to have that style because it was the only way to do it.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, well, of course. But it's, for me, it's I like it very much that we could make an artistic decision with this and say it is fitting for the game. It gives it a unique look. It is what we want. And I realize that it's not to everyone's liking, by the way. There are people who say, oh, the environments look great, but what's up with those characters? And I say, well, at some point you have to say, well, I disagree. This is something that we want that way. It's impossible to please everyone. And I believe it's better to have something that really, that stands out. Right.
So you mentioned that the game is taking a little bit longer to create than you had perhaps first planned. What's the roadmap ahead now with the game? When do you hope to be finished, and what platforms?
Oh, the official date, I hope it's official, is now July. And the game is going to be out on the major consoles, on PC, and also on the Switch. Yeah, and that is something we're delighted, of course, that this is working out. And also there has been quite some attention from the Switch scene, if you will. And that was a little bit surprising, but also it makes us happy. I believe it's a great thing.
It kind of feels, this kind of game, there aren't a lot of those on Nintendo platforms traditionally, perhaps. So perhaps it kind of fills a void, if you will.
Yeah, maybe, could be. It is certainly something that I could totally see on a console like that. Maybe it's also that there hasn't really been a console like that before, obviously. But I believe games like this one, they do have a place, and they do have a future on handheld devices as well. And this may be the time now. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.